Hello and welcome. This is the 13th teaching in our series on Maitreya, on Buddha nature. And so wherever you are, then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and to those who are here just now and to those joining us on YouTube. So as usual, we spend this very important moment at the beginning of the session, trying to sort of gather ourselves in from all the dispersed and distracted occupations and to focus on Dharma. I often think of it like somebody who's been swimming underwater, coming up for a breath of oxygen. So we have our daily lives and so much to do, but then we have our times of meditation or of study, and we try to make them exclusive, I suppose is the word, to exclude all the daily busyness and just have this moment of deep breath of Dharma oxygen to help us continue on this amazing journey through life. So we start, of course, with our prayers, which express our heartfelt wish to become enlightened, to help everybody. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long and be healthy. May they be well provided for, have good friends, find respect. May they live in places of peace, places of plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, the sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru am kurim arajite karote keyore tejawati oloyani peshudal nemale malapan ye kure kaka grasana omuke paramuke amuke sham dawane sawa graha bandhanane negritva Savabhava pravadina vimuktam arapasha savitva buddha mudra anodgatita savamare butsarite rita parishuddhe biga shantu savamara kama ne. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our head on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. As always, we start with this zoom in to the structure of the text. It helps us to be aware, remember, learn the structure. it's helpful. So of the 3 turnings of the Wheel of Dharma, this text is based on the 3rd turning. It's a Shastra, and it comes from Asanga, inspired by future Buddha Maitreya. Text itself is in 3 parts: the good beginning, good middle, good end. Good beginning's the title and the homage. The good middle is most of the text, and the end is the dedication. In the good middle, we have 2 main sections composed of 7 chapters, 7 Vajra points. The first 3 go together: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, presented as the result we want to achieve. And the last 4 of the 7 Vajra points are presented as the cause for that achievement. They are Buddha nature, enlightenment, Buddha qualities, and enlightened activity. We're in the second section, chapter 4, about Buddha nature. This is presented through 3 important statements, 10 detailed explorations, and 9 examples. We're in the second part of those, which is the 10 detailed explanations, and of those 10, we're in part 3, which started with a look at parts 3 and 4 together, and then looking particularly at part 3, which is Buddha nature as a result, as an outcome. And second. So that's where we are. And where we left it last time is seeing these 4 things that as an outcome Buddha nature is, these 4 things which are unique to the 3rd turning of the Wheel of Dharma. So, well, I've said it quite a few times, but it's just so true. To really get these teachings, we do need some knowledge of and some experience of the content of the first 2 turnings of the Wheel of Dharma. And to put this in context, so what we were looking at is that this is purity beyond impurity and purity, that this is self beyond self and no self, and that this is happiness beyond happiness and suffering, and that it is permanent beyond permanence and impermanence. So how can you say artificial intelligence, simple linear logic will have problems with this? So purity beyond purity and impurity. I mean, what does that mean? And what do all of these 4 mean? So last time, in the last session, we looked a little bit. I think it will be useful to stick with this topic, to explore it further. So this purity beyond purity and impurity. Purity and impurity is what happens in our stream of consciousness. So to really understand this, we need to understand what is our stream of consciousness, how it works. You'll only really do that if you meditate. Of course, you can study it, and you can understand words, ideas like duality, non-duality. You can logically make sense of it, but it's only when you meditate that you really start to explore, and not in one quantum leap, step by step, the meaning of duality, non-duality. So we need to understand our mind and how it makes us who we are, and how it gives us our own totally unique, totally subjective version of existence. What you call the world, or these days more than the world, the universe, or even the multiverse, it gets bigger and bigger when you get into it. Whatever that is for you, so let's say the universe isn't the universe. It's your universe. So what for me is the universe, what for you is the universe, it's quite different. And there is no way we can take your mind and my mind and compare them. You are unique. And what you call the universe, what you experience as life, other people, other planets, whatever, the four elements, what's your five senses are perceiving just now, how you are perceiving them, what they mean for you. That's your world. It's not the world. Now, this makes more and more sense as we meditate. So, what do we explore when we meditate? We become aware of inputs through our five senses and how subjective they are. How subjective they are. And then through those inputs, then we have mental activity. Now, it would be great if you could understand this bit of language. In Tibetan, there's something which is namtok, which is usually translated as thoughts. And you see lots of texts, thought, non-thought, concepts, non-concepts. But namtok, which is such a big deal in these teachings, namtok is not just thoughts. So please think for a moment, what are thoughts for you? When you hear the word thoughts, and if I talk to you and say, your thoughts, what does it mean to you? Usually it means ideas. It's like words in the head, isn't it? It's like an inner conversation. That's what I think, but maybe you think differently when you hear the word thoughts. Is that what you're, more or less, something like that? The word namtok means all of our mental activity, which we'd call thoughts, feelings, reactions, mental images, everything that goes on that's not pure sense input, a taste, a smell, a sound, a sight, the living moment. Everything that reacts to that, processes that, experiences it, is namtok. So just to say thoughts and concepts, which most translators do, is a bit misleading. We're talking about mental activity. So if when you are reading Dharma texts or listening to Dharma teachings, and you hear thought or concept, non-thought, non-conceptual, think this probably means with the mental activity of my personal stream of consciousness or not. All the mental activity, not just ideas, not just words in the head. That's very important. So when we explore that, then we start to see what are called extremes. How there are ideas and they are pitted against each other. This is good, so that's bad. This is holy, so that's unholy. This lasts. This doesn't last. What are we talking about? Is it that things last or they don't last? What we're really talking about is in our perception, our personal perception, or in our human perception as far as we can know by sharing language, although we can never get inside somebody else's head. Even when you're very, very, very close to somebody, you can only get a little bit inside their head. Does that make sense? Anyway, that's another story. So when we say, so now with that in mind, me having said that, let's take the first of our 4 things in this section, which is called in itself purity. And so last time we looked at the notion of purity, and in particular in relation to human bodies. Maybe the word purity, which is a very proper translation of what's being said, doesn't convey what we're getting at. What we're looking at here is what's noble, what's desirable in terms of wanting the best. So you've got an idea of the best and the idea of the worst. So we want to avoid the worst and the not so good, and we want the better, and we can dream of getting the best. Unfortunately, what this conjured up in my mind this morning wasn't very nice images, but it kind of stopped me in my tracks. So what can you say? Let's switch off the official teaching for a moment and go into the world we live in, right? And some of the impure, let's say, or is it? This is the question. So people who are very rich, not everybody who's very rich, but some people that you've probably heard about in the news over the last 20 years who are very rich. So who, within the limits of being human, who can do more or less more than any other human can do. So what can they do with their freedom and their money? So I'm trying to tell you about the image that came up in my mind. Is this person, was his name Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who had an island, and then all these super rich people were sort of flown there to have sex with young girls and things. I mean, this is kind of the top of the top, right? For most people, it's disgusting, it's immoral, didn't ought to happen, and so on. But for them, because you can pay for it and it can be organized, that's kind of the top dream of all the dreams. You go to a place that's a beautiful island, you eat the best food, you live in luxury. Yeah. And you, like you say, live out your sexual fantasies. So when we say pure and impure, we're looking at what is kind of what people long for as the best quality of living. So that was a weird example that came up in my mind. I hope it doesn't shock you. But I was trying to think, what what do humans long for? What do they fantasize if anything was possible within reason? So when we get the first turning of Dharma, then Buddha says what people strive for, what they think of as, let's say, noble, the best, rather than saying pure, then it is human relationships, sex, wealth. So then that's the five senses. It's how to get the best things to see, the best music to hear, the best food to taste, the most delightful incense and perfumes to smell, and then sense number 5, which is the most interesting one, physical sensations, nerve endings, hunger, thirst, heat, cold, and all those things. These are feelings like that, how to get the best ones. So most of life is striving for that. If you look at kings and rajas in their palaces, then they live in luxury of the five senses, and they nourish all of them. So Buddha says that isn't so noble, so ultimate, so desirable as it seems. And so, as we saw last time, then Buddha teaches how the body is the 36 impurities, and so on and so on. So we learn to look at things through different eyes. It's remedial teachings. So the problem is that people make their own suffering because of what they desire. So if you can show that what is desirable isn't so desirable as that, then you can help people not make so much karma, harmful karma, in striving to get what they want. It's a remedy. So you're changing somebody's mindset, right? So from bodies, so I'm going to get a really kind of handsome or beautiful body, and we admire bodies. Gosh, maybe it's a good thing I can't share all of my inner thinkings and fantasies with you, because you might be shocked. But anyway, so we sort of change our thinking about bodies, and we reduce, and eventually can get rid of the karma. So the first turning of Dharma is very remedial, change of thought. Second turning of the wheel of Dharma is different. It's not a change of attitude, a change of namtok, the whole way we think, react, feel. Sorry, I get jammed up. There's so much to say and to communicate that I don't give a very good talk, but this namtok, it's everything. It's like first we hear the Buddha's teaching about bodies being impure, about, well, let's take something else. I'm thinking too much about bodies. Let's go to something else that's desirable. Smells, okay. Smells, nice smells, bad smells, that normally we do. So, so in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we see how we can strive to get nice smells, for instance, and cause suffering in the process, like killing musk deer to get musk, which is a very, very expensive, precious smell. Just an example. So first we get the idea about things that we deemed attractive and worthwhile and worth striving after and worth giving years and all of our life energy to get. It's not that big a deal, and in fact it's very impure. We change the thinking process to start with, but then we actually change all of the namtok, which means our own reactivity, so that as we meditate and put the ideas the Buddha teaches us into practice, then you smell incense, you smell a sewer, it just smells. Once you work with that, it gets quite strange, because sewers can actually start smelling nice, and incense can start smelling, so what? Anyway, I'm going slowly. I'm thinking about it because I'm hoping you're thinking about it and wondering what's he going to say next. And you've got time to think about the same topic. So in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we changed the namtok from a samsaric namtok, which is getting us into trouble. So thinking process, reactive process, emotional process, everything that determines us and other and the way we see it, we're changing unhelpful namtok for helpful namtok. In the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, we want to go beyond namtok, beyond being in the prison of our thoughts and our emotions and so on, and to see beyond. It's about understanding what our mental activity is and how it's all illusion, all of it. So when we've done that and gone through the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, and this thinking mind, reactive mind, emotional mind, everything that makes us who we are is seen as voidness, shunyata. It all comes and goes in space. But the main point of the second turning of the wheel of Dharma is to be no longer caught in the prison of namtok. And we need to get that far, or to understand what that means. Do you know you're in a prison of your own namtok? Do you know you have so many invisible walls and things that make you, you, by your emotional responses? The way you think about things, the way you project onto people, the way you project onto yourself. All of this, we need to be able to see through it and to be no longer captivated by it. And in meditation, we find a neutral space where we have some perspective, so that I see historical Ken reacts like an Englishman, for instance, not like an American or an Indian or a Chinaman, or certainly not like a Tibetan, and so on and so on. We see it happening, but we're no longer caught by it. That's not me anymore. That's history. The real new me is the serenity, the peace in meditation, the ability to observe, not be caught by the old things, the old emotions, thoughts, all of it, namtok. So in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, we're seeing through the prison. We're understanding there is beyond the prison. Now in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, we are looking at what is beyond the prison. But first you need to understand the present. So it's so important to work systematically through the turnings of the wheel of Dharma to make this third one make sense. So in the first turning, we've got the idea of desirable, and then we've got the remedy of not really desirable, gets you into trouble. In the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then we see that both desirable and undesirable are states of mind. We look around here. How many people are we? 30-something. And each one's got their own mindset, what you desire, what you think of as desirable, undesirable. It's not the same for each of us. So now in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, we're looking at what is pure, what is noble, what is, in a way, the most desirable, but beyond the idea of desirable and non-desirable. What is pure in itself. So in this first point, we've got a timeless, immense, so immense perspective. We're looking at Buddha mind, which is the mind that embraces everything and everyone that ever was, ever will be, from what we meet on this planet to the incredible, unimaginable realities in other time-space realities. Whatever it is, we're looking at being in that space, in that wisdom, in that clarity, in that huge understanding of everything and everyone. Then you see somebody who's still being reincarnated, who still is the puppet of their stream of consciousness. They want this is desirable, and they see this as undesirable. It's all the workings of their mind, their relative mind. Ken here, this person there, that dog there, this extraterrestrial over there in their stellar system with their 25 legs and 22 eyes that see infrared and not like we see, whatever. A being locked up in their stream of consciousness where there's good and bad, pure and impure. And we're looking at what is changeless, always was, always will be. Beyond that, it's naturally pure. Beyond any idea of, oh, that's pure, that's desirable, that's noble, or the opposite. This is what we're talking about. And I've spent a lot of time talking in a strange way, I think, not just rabbiting out facts, Dharma facts, to try and help you get a grip of where we're at here, what it's really about. It's a natural purity that just is pure. So when you get there, that's bloody obvious. You're there. It's desirable because it's what you've been desiring throughout your whole journey as a bodhisattva. Okay, we're talking about absolute truth, but in reality, you're you, I'm me, we're on our bodhisattva journey. We're baby bodhisattvas, most of us. We've got a long way to go. What do we want? Enlightenment. When do we want it? Well, ideally now, but actually it might take a few lifetimes or a few hundred lifetimes. So if we are pragmatic, if we are realistic, we want enlightenment. Enlightenment is the most desirable thing. It is the most noble thing. It's top of the want list. This is what we're looking at in this first of the four. What do we want? Because it's the best, because it's the purest, the most noble. So when you get there to Buddha mind, well, you're there. There's nothing left to desire, you're just there, and it is. And out of all things, it is naturally pure. I don't think I can say more. I'm not very happy with what I said, but I'm trying to, how can you say, help? So anyway, it's what we talk about in the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma. And there's one quote from the Heap of Jewels Sutra. Where have I got that? So Heap of Jewels Sutra is the Buddha talking to Mahakashyapa. You know, Mahakashyapa became head of the Sangha when Buddha passed. Very, very important disciple of the Buddha. He says, Kashyapa, what is the correct way for bodhisattvas to approach phenomena? It is this. It's the middle way, the correct, discerning appreciation of phenomena. Kashyapa, what is this middle way, which is a proper, discerning appreciation of phenomena? Kashyapa, permanence makes one extreme. Impermanence makes a second extreme. Whatever lies beyond these two extremes cannot be analyzed. It cannot be shown. It is not apparent. It's totally unknowable by the stream of consciousness. Kashyapa, this is the middle way, which is the correct discerning of phenomena. And then he carries on. Kashyapa, self is one extreme. Selfless is a second extreme. And then what is the middle way? He tells us. Samsara is one extreme. Nirvana is a second extreme. Whatever's beyond these two cannot be analyzed, cannot be shown, and so on. So this is the middle way at the heart of the Buddha's teaching, at the heart of the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma, at the heart of middle way philosophy, Madhyamaka philosophy, so important to Tibetan Buddhism. So now we're looking at this so-called middle, which cannot be known by Namtok. Your senses cannot experiencing it as a feeling, as a meditation experience, as a vision, as a sound, as like whispered teachings in your ears, sounds, thoughts, anything that we are in this stream of consciousness, all of our tools, all of our equipment, can't get it. And so it's unthinkable, unknowable through the equipment we have just now. With the equipment we have just now, we have ideas of pure and impure. Let's go on to the second one. Self is one extreme. No self is the second extreme. So self, we know the illusion of self is behind all of our samsara, all of our suffering. It's striving for me, this illusion of me that created all of our suffering. So in the first turning, the Buddha teaches us about no self. We looked into this last time. In the second turning, then we realize that both self and the idea of no self, the teaching of no self, they're both ideas. So there you are, you, a stream of consciousness, a human being, a Buddhist, and you've got the namtok of self, the whole way you feel yourself, experience yourself, think about yourself. You. If I say you, then what you feel, not somebody else. Everything gets us into trouble, gets us into samsara. So then Buddha teaches there is no self, no self, no self. So we have the remedy. In the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, we see these are just ideas. People think self, people think no self. It's the ideas which help us go forward. In practice, when we apply this to practice, and then if we take the first point and the second point together, purity, impurity, self, no self, together, then as we go from the first turning of the wheel of Dharma to the second turning, from renunciation to the Bodhisattva teachings, then we take a worldly self, this impure body, and rather than simply thinking of it as impure, in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, we think, yes, I'm alive in an impure body. This is samsara. It's a body that gets itself into trouble. We say the 5 aggregates that attract suffering to themselves. But I can use this body to be a bodhisattva. I can be in the world through being alive in this body. I got one of these and I can speak, and because I'm embodied in this world, I can meet other bodies in this world that are the vehicles for the minds in them, and I can help. So even though I've got an impure body, I'm incarnated. This incarnation can serve both as a place of learning, where I can develop my own welfare, and a place of benefit, where I can benefit others. So although it's kind of impure, it can be useful. And then I'll work through the levels and get to the bodhisattva levels, where I've got a body of light, not one of these impure bodies anymore. We've got an idea of a journey. When we come, impure body, but with a bodhisattva motivation. And then from the samsaric, ego-centered self, we make that now the bodhisattva. So I've got this universal identity. I've now joined the ranks of bodhisattvas. We're all the same inside. So I have a stream of consciousness. I have a relative personal existence. And even though it doesn't make me samsaric anymore, I now think of this as a journey to enlightenment. Many, many lifetimes of incarnation, where this stream of consciousness will become Buddha. So the purity and the idea of self go into the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the bodhisattva idea. Then in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, we get the basis for Vajrayana teachings, where enlightenment's right now. This body is the home of all of the Buddhas, and Dakas and Dakinis. We've gone to the other end of the spectrum. We're trying to find the eternal right here, right now, in our body. What is Buddha mind, changeless Buddha nature, is always here. How to find it, and learn to think of our body as like a temple, like Milarepa says. And within this temple, there is every possible Buddha, all the Yidams, all the Dakas, all the Dakinis. Our body is a very sacred place. And we learn to relate to it in that way. And then what this body, what is it? It's the power to see, it's the power to hear, the five senses. What we see, hear, touch becomes sacred. We call it pure view, pure appearances, pure seeing. So that can only happen if we understand these Buddha nature teachings. So when we look in this section, which is about fruition, when we get to the results of our meditation practice and our study, it's really happening, then we start to encounter this timeless, changeless purity, which is beyond any relative idea of going from an impure samsaric life to a pure bodhisattva life. It's right now. So it's the same with all four: purity, identity, and then happiness, or well-being, let's say, beyond all idea of personal well-being or personal not well-being, not being well in oneself, beyond anything related to a stream of consciousness where there's up and down, better and worse, happiness and suffering. Then when all of that stream of consciousness is no longer the prison that you're in, and your mind is awakened to this Buddha nature, fruition, then you've never been so well. This is not just, it's not well-being as we know it. It doesn't mean that you are blissed out your brains in terms of namtok, that your five senses are on steroids, whoopee, and that your thinking mind is thinking full of blissful thoughts, and that you're emotionally kind of out your brains with happiness. This is seeing it through samsaric eyes of ultimate well-being. That's the word happiness, dewa, well-being, or not being well, where in samsara we're not very well at all, and nirvana means getting rid of all the suffering. Beyond all of that, this is naturally so healthy. Naturally so healthy. There is no greater well-being. And the main point is, why is there no greater well-being? Because it depends on nothing to be what it is. It doesn't depend on circumstances, it just is. So wonderfully, perfectly well. So we use our terminology, words like bliss, to describe Buddha. One of the words for Buddha is sugata. Sugata means the one who became the great bliss. Sukha, gata. Gata became sukha, great bliss, became blissful. We use our words, but what we mean by bliss, what makes you get blissed? What is it? It's sensorial, or it's imagination, it's thoughts, it's ideas, blissful ideas. It's none of that. But when you get to it, fruition is this, then there was nothing in the relative world that your stream of consciousness experienced that was so well, so perfectly healthy, so perfectly naturally well as this. So there is happiness, And then the last one of the four is about permanence. Now, permanence may not be the best translation. What we're looking at is lastingness. In the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we have some idea that things last. And so we strive for them. I often use it as an example. You have to forgive me always repeating. But it was vivid for me. I used to marry people in Samiling Temple, which in itself was a controversial thing. Some people said, temples aren't about people getting married. They're about people getting out of relationships altogether. But there was a demand, and is something that we did, marriage blessings, and it was my job to do that, give a blessing, a ceremony, and so on. So there's what you have to say to comply with the law. When you marry people, it's a formula that's accepted by the government. But then people make their own promises. So you have in front of all these two people in love, relatively blissful, and they turn and say, things like, I want to wake up to you every morning for the rest of my life. And they really mean it. 5 years later, 10 years later, there'll probably still be some who really mean it. But often by then, the story has changed. You're fed up waking up next to that person. You prefer to have your own bedroom, at least, or to wake up next to somebody else or whatever. But people really mean it. I want to be with you forever. This is kind of it. Wonderful. And then the counterproofs, the shock when you get bad news from the doctor, show just how we kind of expected it to go on forever. And everybody gets sick. It just depends what's going to get you. Will it be your heart? Will it be cancer? Will it be this? One of them will get you. We're just waiting for it to happen. But when it does happen, and then you see, even when something like that does happen, people call it wake-up call or shock. You're woken up for, 24 hours. It's really a shock. You're half woken up for the week that follows. You very quickly go back to sleep till you get the next wake-up call, and you realized how you've slumped back into this feeling of lastingness. Nothing lasts. So in the first turning, we have lasts. We have illusions of things lasting. Our own beauty, our own strength, our own health, our own reputation, our own status, wealth. Whatever it is, we get asleep in a feeling of this is going to go on. So it becomes a shock when we lose the health, the wealth, the relationships, the status, whatever it is. So Buddha teaches impermanence. So while we're in the relative journey of a stream of consciousness caused by karma, there will be always this illusion that things last, that gets us into trouble, and we need this remedy, which is the Buddha's teachings on impermanence. And then in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then we, how can we say, use impermanence as part of our bodhisattva journey, part of our wisdom, whereby we can help other people deal with their own clinging to things because of our wisdom about impermanence. And we can free ourselves through our wisdom of impermanence on a journey in which impermanence is the Buddha's teaching and the illusion of lastingness is the cause of samsara. But then beyond all of that, when the stream of consciousness is liberated, then you're in this space of everything, throughout any sort of history, anywhere, in any sort of being's mentality, everything. In that space, you're in what never has changed, never will change. It is naturally lasting. It's more than lasting when you get there, beyond the illusions of lasting, which aren't true, and their remedies, which are the teachings on impermanence. They're all states of namtok. So anyway, we've spent a lot of time, I've spent a lot of time on this. I didn't really say much more than I said last time. I just want to get the importance of this across, and to show two things: the importance of understanding the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, and the importance of actually meditating and practicing ourselves so that this becomes a reality, not an idea. You see, we can understand the ideas of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, just more ideas. But to really taste, savor what they mean, we need to stop and think about them and explore deeply. Deep think, I call it deep thinking. So now if we go to the text. So where are we in the text? One way or another, I hope, we've got to page 115 in the original text, verse 39. And so having looked at those four truths about Buddha nature as a result, beyond their four dualistic extremes, then it says, as a conclusion, those of compassionate love, the bodhisattvas, have, through prajna, through their wisdom, middle way wisdom, completely severed all self-cherishing. They will not want to enter a personal nirvana because they dearly care for every being. Hence, by reliance upon these means to enlightenment, i.e. wisdom and compassion, the deeply realized are neither in samsara nor in the quiescence of personal nirvana. So this verse is about nirvana and how to get there. So that's what we need to look into next, verse 39. So it says, when it says those of compassionate love, we mean bodhisattvas. And we're looking at nirvana. So what you need to know, what you probably already know anyway, is that there are two meanings of nirvana in the Buddhist teachings that we come across. They are two different meanings of the same meaning, right? The actual meaning of nirvana, which is ngangen le depa in Tibetan, ngangen le depa. Le depa means gone beyond. Ngangen means suffering. Gone beyond suffering. This is the meaning of nirvana. Nirvana is a negative term, in as much as it tells you what's no longer there, what's not there. It's terms like non, un. It's a negative. No more suffering. Nirvana means you're out of suffering. doesn't tell you the word nirvana, it doesn't tell you where you are. It tells you what's no longer there. So nirvana is not, you say, a word about a state. It's about no longer being in a state. It's like geographically, it was a film, wasn't it? A film, Out of Africa. Right. Out of Africa means you're no longer in Africa. You're out of Africa. It doesn't tell you where you are. So if somebody phones you and they say, oh, hello, and you ask them, are you still in Johannesburg? And they say, no, I'm out of Africa now. Well, you know they're out of Africa, but it doesn't tell you where they are. The term nirvana only means your suffering is finished. It tells you what's not there anymore. So there are various stages of liberation you can get to, where in all of them the suffering is finished. There'll be no more personal suffering that we call samsara. Samsara means state of suffering. So when you reach nirvana, state of suffering has ended forever. That's what the word nirvana tells you. There are two main destinations that are free forever from suffering. One is the state of the arhat, and we can call this nirvana with a little n, because it's genuinely free forever from samsaric suffering. They'll never go back. When people attain that result, whatever is in our namtok, our stream of consciousness, our habits of thinking, our emotional habits, our reactivity habits, everything that we are has been worked with so that there's no more causes and conditions for suffering. Gone forever, taken out by the root. Arhats reach that. And then super arhats, we sometimes call them pracheka Buddhas, reach that and acquire many, many qualities of wisdom, especially about interdependence. What the bodhisattvas aim for is a nirvana, a state beyond samsaric suffering, but let's say with a capital N, which is both free from ordinary samsara, karma, cause and effect, the effects being suffering. It's beyond that, it avoids that, it's got free from that, but it's also free from the arhat state, which is a meditative absorption in a state of continuous peace. It's an absorption in a state of peace, so there's no suffering. But it is an absorption in a state of peace. Absorption means absorption. Gone. Gone. Your use to others can't be very much because you're gone. Your mind, everything you are, is absorbed. We know what it's like to be absorbed in everyday life. When somebody's deeply absorbed, you can talk to them and they don't hear you. Or, whatever, that's ordinary absorption. Meditation absorption, for those who are really good at it, they can sometimes go for a day, a week, 2 weeks. Khenpoken could do several weeks of absorption where you're gone. Your mind is 100% within its focus, which is beyond the senses and so on. So that's their way out of suffering, but it's not of much use to people. The bodhisattva wants to not suffer, but also to be totally engaged with helping others not suffer. So the way this is achieved, that's the result we're aiming for. The Buddha's nirvana, which is not gone into a meditation state, samadhi, but which is liberated, but in the presence of phenomena, in the reality of the five senses, in the reality of the existence of other beings. You're awake, you're alive in that world, but inside, totally free from any of the causes of suffering. It's like in Christianity, where they say, in the world, but not of the world. So that's the result. We're still in the section about result, that we want the Buddha's nirvana. To get there, we have two key tools: wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the wisdom of shunyata, and in particular, non-ego aspect of shunyata. So through realizing the total illusion of having a solid idea of ego, that's destroyed by prajna, wisdom. So then, because there is no delusion of self, there's no creation of samsara. We avoid samsara through wisdom, but we avoid going into the bliss of meditation, absorption, through our compassion for other beings. We want to be there for them, helping them, and also helping ourselves to Buddhahood by the experience of compassion in action that there will be through interaction with our fellow beings. It's only through helping them that we learn the 6 paramitas. We develop them as realities, as real living strengths, powers. It can only happen as we learn to help other people. So compassion keeps us out of nirvana with a little n, and wisdom keeps us out of samsara. There are 2 main tools. That's the main meaning of this verse. Now we come, so that was part 3, which was about fruition. What is Buddha nature when you get there, when you get the result, when there's the fruition? Then you find this is the ultimate who you are. This is your ultimate identity. It's what we all are. We found the identity. This always has been, always will be. This is what really lasts. This is what is really pure. And this is what is true well-being, true health. The healthiest, purest state of mind that could ever be. So now in point 4, we get function. We're not looking at Buddha nature as a fruition anymore. We're looking at, okay, that's what we really are. That's our true identity. That's the purity. That's what lasts. What does it do? What is its function? And so the key verse says, were there no such Buddha element, which in Sanskrit is the word dhatu, then there would be no discontent with suffering, nor desire, effort, and aspiration for nirvana. It's quite interesting when it says, what does it do? It presents it in terms of, if that wasn't there, what wouldn't there be? It says, if there were not this dhatu. So if we had a lot of time and we wanted to explore this text very, very fully, then we'd look at this term dhatu, and it comes up a lot in Buddhist teachings. It comes up in the first turning of the Wheel of Dharma teachings, the various dhatu. It means the elements of being, the 5 prime elements, earth, water, fire, wind, space, that are the 5 elements of all particles, and then particles make up reality. In that experienced reality, we have, again, the 5 elements as manifestation in terms of our body, in terms of the universe around us. So this word dhatu comes up, first turning, second turning. Now, in the third turning of Dharma, we're seeing that this Buddha nature is kind of our ultimate element. And we'll come back to this later on in the text in quite a lot of detail. So let's leave it here for now. But it's talking about this as the key element in the sense of component of you. So it said, if this was not the dhatu, the key component, the very essence of what you are, or what anybody is, then there wouldn't be a feeling of rejection for suffering and a feeling of longing for nirvana. But we're looking at it a bit like, well, we've got good examples these days. Gravity is one. It's like the gravity from the earth spinning. It keeps us all here, as you see when you see people in the International Space Station, just kind of floating around. And then if you're way up in space, well, there's always gravity and attraction, but it's not powerful gravity of the Earth's pull. It's quite interesting. You go up, and the further up you go, then the less gravitational pull there is. So at one point, you can break free from the Earth's atmosphere. So anyway, it's like saying, if that gravitational pull were not there, then, well, what would happen? We'd all float upwards, and so many things on Earth couldn't happen. But we only discovered gravity in recent centuries and explored it, and can explore it now and understand how different bodies attract each other and the power they have, the power of pull. It's quite a new topic, discovering where it comes from. But it's always been there, whether people knew where it came from or not. As far as all life on Earth is concerned, there's always been gravity. Who was it? Newton and the apple. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't the first one, but really, things drop. The apple drops to the ground. The apple doesn't just float off from the tree or rise upwards like a balloon. Plop, it comes down, and then people drop feathers and other things from tops of towers to try and understand what gravity is. All that's relatively recent, but it's always been there. It's like the Earth's magnetic core, the magnetic field of the Earth that I think birds use. These amazing birds that go from the southern tip of Africa all the way up to the north of Europe every year. And I don't know what the latest theory is, but part of the theory is they sense the Earth's magnetic field. They've taken birds, they've put them in huge hangars where they could reverse the magnetic field, and they've seen birds change direction. They've done these experiments. It was always there. Birds sensed it. Whether you have an idea of the Earth's magnetic field because of and then these days we think the molten core, the iron that's in the core, all that stuff that explains it is new knowledge. But the magnetic field has always been there. So this is very much the spirit of this particular chapter on function, and why it's using negatives, because you can't just take anybody and show them the power of Buddha nature. You can't show them what it is. You can only say, If this wasn't there, then how would it be? So now we come back to, at the beginning of this Buddha nature chapter, our three statements. All beings have it. All beings have Buddha nature the same. Then the third point, but there is potential, meaning in some beings it's very covered up, and in what they're doing they're covering it up more. In some it's less covered, and so they feel something, they become seekers. They think there is more than just material life. There is some deeper sense, there is some deeper morality. It's basically a moral universe. This is what Buddha is teaching. If we are kind and helpful and less egotistic, then this brings good things to us and to everybody. And if we're unkind and selfish and harmful, this brings bad things to us and to everybody. It's basically a moral universe. There is a goodness, and then there is an ultimate good. This is what the third turning teachings are about. What is this ultimate good? Has beautiful names in Vajrayana. For instance, Primordial Buddha, one of the names is Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra, beautiful term, means absolutely everything is good. Nothing but goodness. Everything so good. It's the name for Buddha. It's the ultimate goodness. So in seekers, there is this feeling there must be more. There is this longing for what is true, truth. A longing to discover the truth of what's going on, and knowing, feeling there is a truth and there is a goodness. And that goodness has a power. So second group were seekers, and then groups 3, 4, and 5 were finders. Those who found the spiritual path that accords with this basic nature. At the same time that there is the seeking, the longing for what is true, there is more and more of a gut reaction to what is impure, harmful, and especially in oneself. It's not just a condemnation of out there and what's wrong. It's mainly, for us Buddhists, inside ourselves, where we get sick and fed up with the not so nice bit of ourselves. And we want to get rid of it, and we want all the good qualities to come out. So it's saying the function of this Buddha nature, what's always been its function, is to give a longing for whatever you want to call it, the sacred, the spiritual, the true, the meaningful, the right. It gives a longing, a seeking for that. And it gives a rejection of what is based in anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, ego, stupidity, ignorance, all those things. That's the fourth point in brief. So it says, were there no such Buddha element, there would be no discontent with suffering, nor desire, effort, and aspiration for nirvana, the end of suffering. Verse 41 is very similar. It's like saying the same thing in different words. It's saying this awareness of samsara's shortcomings, of its suffering, and nirvana's quality, well-being, happiness, are due to the existence of this, and here it's called potential, rik in Tibetan, gotra. So it's very much related to that first part of this Buddha nature teaching. Everyone has it the same, but there is gotra, a different potential in everybody according to how covered up or how uncovered this Buddha nature is in them through their past lives, karma, through what they're doing in this life, and so on. So this potential gives those things. Why? Because without it, then that just wouldn't happen. Let's move on. There's not much more to be said about that point. It's, how can you say, this is a point 4 is one to take on trust. It's what Buddha's telling us. It's what Maitreya's telling us. It's what Asanga's telling us. Then our teachers who have the experience of Buddha nature, it's what they're telling us. It's what they vividly understand. It's why they're helping us. They are nurturing this force inside you and inside me, which can reject samsara and the world of suffering and creating the causes of suffering, the way we hurt others, the way we hurt ourselves, something that gets more and more fed up with that, saturated, sick and fed up with that. They can see that that can be nurtured in us with the right teachings. And then this longing for what is our true identity, our purity and so on, that can be nurtured and become an inspiration so that we want to use this life. So, for instance, we get the teachings on precious human existence, or we get an empowerment and our heart is open to the fact that really you're Chinrezik, you're Tara, deep inside. However it is, our teachers help us to turn our back on the selfish world of suffering and to open our hearts to the Bodhisattva way, the Buddha way of being a help for everybody. So now let's just look briefly and come back to it probably next time at point 5. So now having looked at points 3 and 4 together, how it is as a fruition and what the function is, now we're looking at not what it does, which was point 4, function. Point 5 is what's it got? What's in there? This is, like all the points, important. We're exploring this Buddha nature, and amongst other things, we're seeing how different it is from the Arhat's understanding of where the Buddha's taking us, which is just the end of suffering, the end of existence. Everything is suffering. We put an end to all the causes and conditions that make that suffering. That's it. Here we're looking, this true nature that's always been there, that is pure, that is our identity, that is true happiness, true well-being, and that is lasting. That what is it? What's it like? It's like asking Buddha, or asking your wonderful Rinpoche, one who's truly realized, what's it like? What's it like being Buddha? Hello, Mr. Buddha or Mrs. Buddha. What's it like? Can you tell me? Like, okay, you're out of all of this mess, we got that. But then, like, when you're out, it's like something I often quote, this person in the lunch queue at Samaning who asked Akon Rinpoche, who said, Rinpoche, what's it like when it's all over? And what's it like when it all ends? It's kind of, this is what we're looking at here. We're not looking at his answer, which was, you think it ever ends, which is another point. But we're looking, this is the spirit of this point of endowments. What is it? What's it got? What's it like? So it starts, verse 42, page 118. It is like, what's it like? It's like a great ocean, an inexhaustible abode containing precious substances of inestimable qualities. So that's one thing, it's like. And then it is like a lamp flame, another thing it's like, because this essence is endowed with inseparable qualities. Ocean, lamp flame, these are our two main examples from Buddha Maitreya. Buddha's answer to what's it like. One is it's like an ocean, so vast and with so much in it. Now, to understand this, we need to understand the fantasy of the ocean in the ancient Indian mind. The ocean was a place full of, it says here, what? Inexhaustible abode containing precious substances of inestimable qualities. So in the idea, the ocean is the place that's full of pearls and corals, precious things. So and it's also part of, how can you say, the fantasies of Central Asia. Central Asia, far, far, far away from the oceans. What's the ocean like? It's a myth. So few people have been there. And then they say it's a place you can make a fortune. If you can manage to go all the way to the ocean, then you just go into it and you come out with corals. And you come out with pearls. And corals, pearls, they're very valuable. You can make a fortune for the rest of your life. This is the legend of the ocean. It comes up, the Buddha used it several times in his teaching. Of course, these days our poor oceans, they're full of plastic. A lot of the corals, the deep red corals, Mediterranean coral, it's become so rare. It was so plentiful here 100 years ago. And pearls and so on. So this is the image. We can't take a modern polluted ocean with all the chemicals and sewage and microplastics. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this beautiful dream of a place full of riches and so vast and so many different wonders and riches. So that when Buddha, or here, Buddha Maitreya, is saying, what's it like? It's saying there's just so many qualities. Each one so wonderful. It's like coral. It's so wonderful when you spend time with it. A pearl is such an amazing thing when you spend time with it. And of course in the ocean, in the old myths, there are the nagas. It's like dragons. They have piles of jewels. They really hoard incredible wealth. So this is Buddha saying, what's it like? So many different qualities, and not just one or two or three or four, but it's like endless and so vast. And then in the second example, that we'll explore next time, along with this first one, is like a lamp flame, where even though there are so many seemingly different qualities, they all come from one and the same Buddha nature. So here it's like a candle flame. We can consider a candle flame because it's warm. So warmth is one quality, and then it gives off light. Light is another quality, and then it has a shape, a beautiful shape of a flame with the yellow bit and the blue bit and sometimes a red bit. It has shape and color. So many different qualities. If we, from our point of view, consider this quality and that quality, but it's a flame. It automatically has all of those. And these days with our physics, we know that what gives rise to the light is also what gives rise to the heat, and the area which is burning and oxidizing, that gives the shape and the color. It's all part of that same subatomic process, that's going on. On our level of perception, has different things, heat, light, shape, but in itself, it's just that oxidation, submolecular process that's going on. So the unity, the inseparability of the qualities is also what Buddha is telling us when we say, what's it like? Saying there is this timeless nature in which all the different qualities are one and the same, yet they manifest in different beings' minds as this quality, that quality, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, this kind, compassionate help to this person, that kind, compassionate, wise help to that person. So many qualities. Ah, dear. That's it for today. That's it. Strange talk from my point of view, but I was trying to get across what was in my mind. I was trying to be helpful. Sometimes people trying to be helpful can be a real pain, and I hope it was a little bit helpful. So anyway, whatever was good and useful and helpful, we will share with everybody, we would dedicate. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. On the contrary, may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Wrong button. Here we go. Ah, dear. So over to you. If you've got anything you'd like to contribute or question I can help with.
Can I have a question?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. This concept of arhathood sounds like, I don't know, artificial to me. I can't understand it much because they say that one of the results, automatic result even, of a good shunyata practice, meditation on emptiness and all that, is actually the development of compassion, seeing all the suffering of all sentient beings and the wish to help them. So how come someone so, developed in meditation? did not develop this compassion side, the Mahayana side.
No, the outcome of shamatha meditation, if you're on the bodhisattva path, will be an appreciation of suffering, but it's not necessarily the outcome of shamatha. Shamatha just means we focus our mind and we train it to be not distracted. Once we overcome distraction, it means our mind stays focused, on its focus, with its focus. And then when that happens, then there is what's called a samadhi. Samadhi means absorption in the focus. The focus is no longer just an anchor that stops you being distracted. We actually learn to be absorbed in the focus. So the outcome is not necessarily compassion. So that's why whenever we do shamatha practice as bodhisattvas, we always start with prayers. We always end with a dedication. The prayers are always prayers of compassion, like we do at the beginning of our session here, so that what we learn naturally through shamatha meditation will nurture not only its own peacefulness and the power not to be distracted, but it will nurture our compassion for those who are distracted and unable to focus. But that's not necessarily the case. And so it says in general, when Buddha was teaching, then because he was aware of this third aspect of Buddha nature, everyone's got it. Everyone is teaching. He knows they have Buddha nature. Everyone is teaching. He knows they have the same Buddha nature. But then he realizes that through all of their past lives, this life, their potential is totally individual. That for some, they are simply not ready, not equipped to go on the bodhisattva path, which is one of interaction with our fellow beings, loving kindness, compassion. Doesn't mean they're totally incapable of loving kindness and compassion, but they're not capable of a path which is absolutely based on giving up selfishness and being there for everybody. So for many people, they're not ready for that. And it's as much as they can do to work with their own mind, their own heart, their own karma, their own thoughts, their own emotions. And so for those, Buddha teaches the Shravaka path, which will get them out of suffering. So arhats, how can you say, from where I am, I have to look up to them. So wonderful, so big, so pure. I'm still in suffering. They got out. I can only put my hands to my heart and think how amazing to have gone beyond your anger, to have gone beyond your lust, to have gone beyond your jealousy and pride, to have gone beyond the ignorance of interdependence and so on, and to have got rid of the causes of suffering forever. They are 1,000 times better than me, from my point of view. Then if I look from the Buddha's point of view, then we say bodhisattvas are better. But it doesn't mean the moment you set your foot on the bodhisattva path, you're better than them. No way. We're just looking from the Buddha's immense, total wisdom at the main spiritual paths. And we're seeing people, how they can be worked with, what they're capable of just now, today, tomorrow, this life, the next life, and the pathways that suit different people. So the arhat thing is very interesting. And the way the bodhisattva literature is, it's all the time saying, please, if you can, don't go that way. Go the Bodhisattva way. So it tends to look down on the Shravaka path, which from the Buddha's point of view, fair enough. But from our point of view, we must develop a huge love and respect for what the Shravakas achieve. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it's done with so much sincerity, courage, strength. I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Ken.
Hi.
It's Jenny.
Yeah.
Sorry if this is a bit of a tangent, but it's just from what you were saying earlier about how like we can only know our own like relative perception of this world and this universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I kind of find it quite overwhelming because I then like think about the possibility of like so many multiverses and countless worlds and things like that, and then think about when we die and then the stream of consciousness is reborn, like how we could just end up anywhere, like not even particularly in this dimension and world with Tibetan Buddhism. And it just feels really like whoa, like overwhelming, like scary. So there's that, and I guess also I was wondering if like the world that we are, or the dimension and universe that we're in, is that like a reflection of our own karma? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It is 100% reflection, and you're quite right. It's scary, but scary is interesting. I had some marvelous conversations, let's say, in the 1980s in Samiling, when I started teaching. I had a very good friend of mine, much older person, Magnus, and he came from a different spiritual tradition. He came from the Gurdjieff tradition, and he got quite, worked up with the idea of using fear as a stimulus for a spiritual path. And so in some, like we were studying Gampopa at the time, and talking about retreat and the ideas to cultivate when you first go to retreat. And Gampopa says, first thing is to say, why did I come here? I came here out of fear for samsara, out of fear of rebirth in future realms and so on. And he said, no, I can't accept this. I can't. A spiritual path should not be based on fear. And so in the end, we found a compromise by not using the word fear, but using the word awe. Now, awe and awesome is become, awesome is a word that, it became used a lot in the last 20, 30 years, but awe, and trying to explain the positive side of, well, let's call it fear. Why don't you mess around with electricity in the bathroom when there's wet and your feet are wet? Because you're afraid of getting an electric shock. So it's a positive thing because it keeps you safe. And you're wary. Wary is another word. You're in awe. Or like if you're in an aeroplane on a long haul flight, it's in tourist class, it's really uncomfortable, and you get that sort of 2:30 in the morning when your legs can't stay still and they hurt and you want to put them up and there's nowhere to put them up, and you're doing airplane seat yoga in all sorts of positions, and you want to lie on the floor, but it's not allowed, This, you would like just to open the door and go and take a walk, but of course you can't open the door because you've depressurized the aeroplane, you get sucked out, and so you can't, because you're afraid of being sucked out at 33,000 feet above an ocean. So that fear of what might happen to you is what keeps you safe. It's what makes you act wisely. And there is, when you're driving's crazy. Driving's crazy. Nowadays, the speed we drive, how close we drive to each other. You see on a motorway, it's just mad. And when people come out of a long retreat, and there's a kind of a week when they need to be gradually introduced into life. So if you take them, for instance, to see the doctor, you drive them really slow, because their impression of speed is like, even if you're going at 20 miles an hour, it looks like everything's rushing past, and you realize the truth of how, well, whatever the word is, dangerous it could be. Yeah, so when we drive, if you drive well, you appreciate the risks and the dangers. So that side of fear is something we use in Mahayana teachings, in all the Buddha's teachings, and in Vajrayana as well. And you're quite right, it is scary. That's the whole reason we're practicing. Whatever we can do about it will be helpful. Whatever we can do about it will mean that next time when we're reborn, then we can get better circumstances. We can connect up again. But it's a hair-raising process. It really is. But we can only do our best, and nobody can do more than that. And then the fear element is, there's an English expression, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Now, a barge pole is a very, very long stick for moving, your barge along. And I wouldn't go anywhere near it. So anything that's to do with the mind poisons, that's to do with fighting other people, competition, that kind of thing. We just don't want the consequences anymore. We don't want to do things now that are going to bring a whole load of rubbish in a future life. But that scariness is because it's what you said was so true. This life, such a brief, wonderful, magic opportunity we need to use every moment, because it's quickly gone. And then whatever we did, well, that determines what happens next.
Thank you so much.
It's healthy. And so we need to nurture it in a healthy way, the scariness.
Okay, thank you.
And the other point you mentioned about to realize that we are pickled in our own point of view. We can do something. We can't do a lot, but we can do something. Like cats and dogs, animals, birds we see. We can really put ourselves in their place. Think, what is their life? Spend time observing them. And then humans as well. Humans is trickier because they're not so different. But like I observe my next door neighbor. He's unsatisfied, and he's coming to the end of his tether. He moved in a couple of years ago. It's not a very big property. He's done almost every home improvement possible. He's built a patio, a terrace. He's laid concrete. He's built a shed, a greenhouse. He needs to do something because he's a DIY man. And when you hear him DIYing, he's kind of happy. But then when it's done, it's done. He's run out of space now. So he was retired. Now he's gone and got himself a job. He's gone back to work. He's got himself a job packaging. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I hear him go off on his motorbike to work. He doesn't need to work. But he said, I don't know what to do with myself at home. So I can't put myself in his head. I can never be him. But I can I can sort of feel a little bit what it's like to be like that and not be like me. So we can do a bit. It's a huge philosophical topic. What's it called? The discreteness of human experience or something like that. We can never experience how it is for another person totally. But we can get some idea, and then that's very helpful for relativizing ourselves.
Hi, Ken. In the chat, Mika describes your talk today as beautiful and strange. And I think that's very apt. I mean, I keep thinking of we're on a long drive with you through 404 verses. And today was a bit like a sort of a pit stop where we stop and think a little bit about exactly where are we going and why we're going there. And I think today was very useful in just emphasizing the importance of understanding, or at least have some understanding of the first second of turning of the wheels in order to be able to understand the third turning of the wheel, which we're looking at. So thank you for that. It's a very interesting talk today, but beautiful and strange.
Well, thank you, Mika. Yeah.
I also have this keep thinking, I mean, it's a wonderful text, but I keep laughing to myself because there's 404 verses and maybe something like 100,000 words used to explain something that is beyond words. Now, in one sense, it's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's that result by removal. To make a room empty, you have to take all the furniture out. Our furniture is our fixed ideas, our fixed emotional responses, and so on. And when you look at, there's a sort of behind and behind the behind. So there's what we do, what we say, but behind that is how we think about ourselves and about life. And that's based on a sort of core feeling of self, and so on and so on, so we can go deeper and deeper. All of this is to help disperse the illusions, but not just samsara's illusions, also some of the, how can you say, helpful illusions that we use on the Buddhist path. So that's the use, and its main use is for meditators. I mean, you can take the whole text as theories. One of the first things I said, there's a theoretical approach and a philosophical approach, where there's acres and acres of writing and commentary about this. But it's mainly for meditators, so that when we meditate and have sacred experience, we don't misproject onto that experience, and we don't let it take us in the wrong direction. So the Buddha nature teachings are marvelous guiding lights in our own meditation journey, because when things happen and we see things through new eyes, then these teachings really come to life. You find they're not just ideas, it's not just a book of ideas, but we're learning something like we're doing here. But it just becomes so true, and it helps us not waste years making classical mistakes with our meditation experience.
Yeah, thank you.
So maybe that's us for today. And sorry, I'm so kind of absorbed in what I'm saying. I don't usually look at the chat. I don't get to look at the chat till afterwards. So thanks, Neil, for flagging up what Mika said. And so wish you all a good week. We're back again next week. We'll look a bit more at these endowments, and then we can move on quite quickly. Some of these sections of the 10 take a lot more explaining than others. Others are quite easy. So anyway, have a great week. And we did the dedications. And it's hello and goodbye to those of you I missed at the beginning. I can see lots of lovely, familiar faces. So lots of love to you all. Bye now.
Ciao very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Ciao. Ciao, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you, everyone.